to the Impostor Syndrome Files. I am so grateful that you're here, and I really hope that you've been enjoying the conversations that you've been listening to, and hopefully finding some tips, some next steps that you can take if you struggle with similar feelings of self-doubt, which obviously, as you're hearing, are fairly universal. This is something that we all go through from time to time. When I started this podcast, my goal was really to try to normalize the experience, to let everybody know that you are not alone, that there's a name for what you're feeling, and that there are steps that we can be taking to manage it more effectively. What I have found over the course of these conversations has been fascinating. I have had an absolutely powerful and different conversation with every single person who I have interviewed. I worried at one point that there may not be enough to talk about. How much is there to say about imposter syndrome? Are the stories going to start to get repetitive? That has absolutely not been the case. Everyone brings a fascinating new perspective to this conversation. I have learned something from every discussion that we've had. I hope you have too. I want to make a note that many of these recordings are being done during the social distancing that's happening with coronavirus. I am doing my best to protect the sound quality, but we are all in homes that have pets, kids, all kinds of background noise going on. For me, it's much more important to share with you a very natural conversation between two people than it is to share a perfectly polished recording. So I hope that you will bear with us if there are moments where the sound is not perfect. Really, my goal is to share stories, not to provide perfectly scripted, perfectly polished audio. So apologies for any imperfections that may be coming through in the recordings, but I'm hoping that you're getting the essence of the message regardless. So thank you again for being here. I wish you all the best and hope that you will consider sharing your own story one day. Thanks again. Welcome, Lori. Thank you so much for being here today. I would love for you to start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, whatever it is that you feel comfortable sharing.
Thank you, Kim. So my name is Lori Kahn, and I am a systems engineer at Lockheed Martin, where I've been for over 20 years. I came from a physics astronomy background, and I have really enjoyed my career path there, especially my involvement with our Women's Impact Network resource group, where I currently have a chair role for the for all of the 5 business areas of Lockheed Martin, where I work with the different leads from that organization, and we work to improve efforts for women at Lockheed Martin in the areas of recruiting, retaining, and advancing women.
Wonderful. That's great. Since we're here to talk about imposter syndrome, I'm curious, what does imposter syndrome mean to you? So what comes up for you when you hear that term, and how, if at all, has it affected you personally as you've been on your own career journey?
Yeah, I think this is something that that resonates with me, Kim, because I have, I guess, for a long time felt like coming from, first of all, being in an engineering company and coming from a science background, I've already felt like, I don't quite measure up with all the other engineers there, and so there's just always kind of like that sinking feeling, like, do I sound intelligent enough? Is what I'm sharing here making sense to everybody else? And do I know enough? I did go back and get a certificate in spacecraft engineering. It was like a 1-year program that Lockheed offered with Stanford, and so I kind of did that to build up my confidence and my credibility. But I think even since doing that, there's just still always that that underlying feeling at times when I feel like I'm being put on the spot intellectually, that maybe I'm not being as sounding as qualified, maybe is the right word, as the other engineers in the room. So that's kind of how imposter syndrome has affected me. And I think beyond that, I'm somebody who is very driven, and I've wanted to get into leadership as well. And I think I've done that through a number of volunteer organizations, especially our Women's Impact Network. But I've struggled when it's come to interviews. I've been qualified to get several interviews for different leadership positions. And I know that at least on 2 cases, I've sabotaged my own self during those interviews. And the way I've done that is while the interview, you're supposed to brag about, you're supposed to sound extremely positive about things you've done. If I'm bringing up a story where I can think of like, oh, well, maybe I didn't do this quite right or whatever, and I managed to say something negative about myself, it's just, I just can't seem to stop myself from doing that at the time. And that's, and every time I've had an interview, I always get the feedback. And that's why I know at least in 2 of those occasions, I've gotten the feedback about how, I really didn't, I didn't sell myself well enough. And I think that's because of this, this feeling of not feeling like I'm qualified enough or good enough for, I work for some amazing engineers. I really admire all the people that I work with. Is just top-notch people. And sometimes I just always feel like, wow, am I really as good as they are? It's been a little bit of a struggle in my career, but I feel like I'm starting to turn the corner on that. But which is why I think having this discussion with you today is important to me to get out there, so people know that it is something you can overcome.
I'm curious, before we move ahead with talking about this shifting perspective, because I think that's going to be really helpful for you and for everybody listening, where do you think that perspective comes from that you're describing of not feeling good enough or not measuring up to the people around you? Is that something that you feel has always been something that you've experienced? Is it, I guess I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm curious how much gender has played a role in this, given that you are in such a male-dominated space.
I'm not so sure of the gender aspect of it for me. I think part of what stems from it was my struggle in physics during even starting in high school. It's like I almost didn't get a major in physics, but I loved astronomy so much that I struggled through physics, and it wasn't as easy becoming a subject for me, but it was the area that I really wanted to focus on and what I wanted to learn. And now working in aerospace, and I've always been fascinated with space. I went to space camp 3 times. It's like, okay, this is something I love to do, so I'm going to work as hard as I can to be the best at it. But I know that academically, I've not always been the best at it, and that's something that just has always stuck with me, I guess. Is like, well, okay, I'm not always the one who understands these things, as perfectly or as clearly as other people do. But that doesn't mean that I don't have a valuable contribution in the role that I have and what I do at Lockheed Martin. And so it's taken me, I think, some time to, once I became aware of I think I got introduced to imposter syndrome a few years ago, my involvement with Lean In circles. And there was a speaker that talked about it. And so I've been aware of it for a while now. And so I catch myself when I start to feel that way and realize, okay, no, you're just, this isn't, this is just your mind playing tricks on you, or you're, trying to be, the perfectionism side of me or whatever, which I think, maybe the perfectionism is a little bit more of a female thing, in some ways, but, yeah, I think it's just part of, of who I am. And I've had to, through time, it's taken awareness and feedback from others, and getting boosted from other people who've been really pleased with my work, that is starting to give me the confidence now that I am good at what I do, and I do bring a valuable contribution that others don't bring as well in my particular field. So
I think what you're describing is really important too. And two things jump out at me. Number one is the fact that you decided what you wanted to do based on your own personal interests and what you really wanted. And so even though physics may not have come as naturally to you as it did to others, you stuck with it, and you decided it was more important to you to do work that was meaningful to you than to take the easy way out, so to speak, and go do something else. So, that in and of itself, I think, is incredibly powerful. The other thing that you mentioned, and it sounds like this may be something that you're doing more consciously now, is noticing when those feelings start to come up, when that imposter syndrome starts to emerge, and really, whether it's actively pushing back against it, or I'll ask you in a moment about what that looks like, but it sounds like just being more conscious that it exists is helping you too.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah, that you got it.
So what do you do, or what are some of the ways in which you feel like you're turning the corner, as you said? Are there active strategies that you're using, or what do you think is changing?
Well, I think one of the things that changed was I changed my work group within Lockheed Martin, and I guess I went from being one of many systems engineers, all very capable, to an area where there were few systems engineers, and I think that's where I started to realize, hey, I really have a talent that not other people here in this area bring, and that's why they had given me a promotion to move over to that new area, and I really started to see, like, oh wow, it's like they don't know how to do this, but I do, and I actually know some things that they don't actually, and here I had been in this other area for so many years, and everyone was so talented, but moving into an area where there was just less of that, just really brought, I think, brought it to light more, and also getting the feedback from others as well about what I bring to the table, I think really started boosting my confidence, and as well in my work role. And I think that from there, it's like, even when I start to get those feelings, I'm able to ignore it even more now, because I know, like, no, this is, yes, you can always do better, but you still know more than this person, or that you're still the most knowledgeable on this topic. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there and say what you need to say.
So it's interesting, because it sounds like a little bit of that was circumstantial, in the sense that you had this opportunity to go to a different group where you weren't just one of many, but you could actually see what makes you special, your unique expertise in that setting.
Yes.
You also were able from what you're describing, right, to tune in a little bit more consciously to what those strengths were. And I think that's such an important point for everybody is we all have choices about the perspective we take on ourselves and how we fit into the environments around us, and how much more empowering is it for you to be of the mindset that, hey, you know what? I do have unique value to bring here, and there is a reason why I'm here, right? Than to choose to focus on all the ways in which you don't have the same skills and expertise that others around you may have.
Yes. Yeah, I was never one of, I think one of the things that people had suggested that I don't really subscribe to, at least not long term, but the whole fake it till you make it thing that people say, it's like, I'm just not someone who can do that. I need that concrete reassurance that no, I am doing the right thing here, and I do know what I'm talking about. So I think changing that work group situation was really a really valuable experience for me. Moving to a small team, moving to on a proposal, and just getting to really shine in the area that I know that I bring the most value in. I think, in an area that I was thinking, oh, it's like there's so many people that can do this, I don't really need to continue doing it. I was trying to get into a different area of management that just wasn't panning out for me. But now I'm seeing like, oh wow, I actually not a lot of people over in this group do know how to do, and I'm talking about requirements and verification is the area that I have an expertise in, that that many of them just they don't understand how that whole concept and how it really works together, and how important it is. But it is valued, and it is something that is needed on every program. The good systems engineering approach to things, and that's just what it took for me. Maybe other things work differently for other people, but for me, that's kind of what's helped me improve my confidence in my technical field.
Well, I think that it's really helpful to think about this from both an internal and an external perspective, because there's a lot of emphasis that we place on our own mindsets and how do we build our confidence, and some of that can feel a little ambiguous and hard to wrap our arms around. The external piece obviously is not as fully within our control, but it does have a really significant impact. And so what you're describing, I think, is really important for others to think about too, which is know the conditions that you need in order to have the most confidence, to be your best self, right? It sounds like you were not set up to be as confident and as successful as you otherwise could be by being one of many in that other group, right? And so it was this transition that allowed you to feel better, to feel more confident, to give more of your unique strengths. And so I think sometimes, again, that external piece feels outside of our control, but it's worth considering, is there a place for me outside of where I am today that would allow me to better utilize my strengths and be more confident in the process?
Yeah.
Was that something that you consciously thought about as you were making this transition, or is it something that you recognize more so in hindsight?
I recognize it more so in hindsight. I was in my last role before I changed the different work group area. I was being overshadowed by. I was a deputy product manager. I was deputy to somebody who had been in his field for almost his entire career, and he was so smart. And so the only time I got a chance to shine would be when he was away. He traveled a lot, and so there would be these opportunities when I could, but I could never shine when he was around. And so I think from that, I knew that I knew that my value was diminishing, and not just because of him, but because the role itself, the project itself was heading downward. And so I knew I had to make a move at that point. And since my other steps to move into subcontract management was the other field I had been trying to get into, and since my efforts to get into subcontract management hadn't worked out, I had put my name in of like, hey, I'm also interested in this other effort where they're looking for systems engineers, and I was willing to move over because they were really desperate for systems engineers, and I felt like, okay, well, this seems to be the best opportunity for me at the time, and I just didn't realize how valuable that would be until I got there.
That's so great that was the outcome of this. And I think that is often what happens is we don't know what we don't know, right? So we're kind of going through our own experiences, responding to the opportunities that come up, and not necessarily consciously thinking about what we need or what's going to be the best move for us. And so for anybody who is feeling like they're in a less than ideal spot, or in a scenario that is undermining their capabilities and their confidence, it's important to know that there are other places out there, whether it's within your existing company or outside of it, where you can have greater confidence and greater impact than you might have right now. What do you
Yeah,
see?
no, it was definitely a blessing for me to make that move and get to work with some new people as well, and get to see a different side of the business that our company has to offer, which is also important for me career-wise, and yeah, I'm really glad I did that.
I'm so happy to hear that. And you mentioned that you are involved with the Women's Impact Group, that you are involved with advocacy for women in STEM. Do you see any themes across the women that you encounter as it relates to imposter syndrome?
Well, what I've tried to, in terms of what I do with the Women's Impact Network, I started out within my own site. I started a Lean-In Circle, and the book by Sheryl Sandberg, Lean-In, was very impactful to me, and and I told you that's when I started attending some of the local meetings, in our Bay Area, and I started a Lean-In Circle at Lockheed, and because I just wanted to delve into all of those topics about how, what are the things that we as women tend to do that, holding us back. And so, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that I've seen common themes maybe with imposter syndrome in the work that I've been doing with women, and I've just wanted to make sure I've provided all the tools that are out there, because different things resonate with different people, and so even though we don't always get, we don't always have the highest numbers of people that show up, but I do know that it is making a difference for those who do come, fairly regularly when we have our meetings. We're now we've now moved on from the lean-in topics, and we pick a different book that we get together and we review and try to improve things. But it's about, it's within those groups that I certainly share struggles that I'm going through at work. They share the struggles they're going through, and so we get that opportunity to network in that way and to see if there are any kinds of common areas, or be able to validate if somebody's saying, hey, I'm being treated this way, does that, that in others in the group, it's like, no, that's not right. You shouldn't, that person shouldn't treat you that way. And you need to, you ought to say something or find someone else to talk to about that. But at least we're kind of this ongoing support group, I call it, where we're learning, but then we're also come back to, okay, what are some real situations that we're having? And I feel like that's really important to me, because I kind of wish I'd had that early on in my career, but it didn't come to light until that book came out, that we just started, having that regular dialogue about that. And so yeah, there are others who have different struggles in their different work areas, but not always the same as me.
I love what you're talking about, though, by creating that space where people can connect very honestly and vulnerably and trust that they're going to be able to share safely is so important. And, you mentioned wishing that had been available earlier. So much of what I do in my own business is based on what I wish I had during my own corporate days too. So I think there's so much benefit that comes with growth, and, we learn so much about ourselves and what we need, and then being able to take that and create community around it and provide these kinds of spaces for women to come together and have these conversations. It's so powerful. And, whether or not imposter syndrome comes up very specifically, I'm sure there's always an undercurrent of confidence, challenges around self-doubt, things like that. So it's great that you are empowering people to get these kinds of things out in the open, instead of suffering in silence and feeling like they're the only ones who have these challenges.
Yeah, and I've certainly been throughout those years. I've been very vocal about the challenges that I've had with my interviews, and it's like even though I'll say it's like, okay, well, this is what they recommend you do, and I tried to do this, but either it didn't work out or something. I'm not afraid to let them know that, hey, I'm not exactly the the perfect example of how you're supposed to do this, but I can tell you this is what's recommended, and if anybody tries it and it does work, definitely let us know. But I feel like we're all on this journey to try to improve and do better, and but yeah, I think having that support group, having that regularity of a meeting, whether people can make it or not, each time, they come when they can come, and it's good to be able to. I feel really good about being able to provide that outlet, not only for my own growth, but for making that available for others, and certainly what really gives me joy is being able to see the younger women who've joined the company who are participating, because they're getting it right from the beginning. They're being able to work these things out at the beginning of their career, and not feel like they're, because and that's been my whole mission when I learned about the fact that, only 20% of women are graduating with engineering degrees, and there's a drop off within the first 5 years of them going in industry where they're feeling like they're isolated or excluded. That's, if there's anything that I can do, because not everyone's like me. I told you about how I could have given up when I, didn't do well in physics, but it was more, I really wanted to stick with the subject of going into the space industry was something that was important to me and something that mattered. And so I stuck with it, but that isn't always the case for other people. And they're willing to well, hey, if I'm not feeling included here, if I'm not, I'll go find something else, and I just, if somebody had, if a woman has the capabilities and has the interest to stay with STEM, I want them to do that. I don't want them to leave because they're not feeling included, they're not feeling valued in the work that they do. And if it is a matter of confidence, then I want to, help them with the tools that they need to get past that.
That's so great and so inspiring. And personally, I believe that there's no better way to build our own confidence than by helping other people. When we are in service to others and using our strengths to empower others, I feel like we're so much stronger and more confident in ourselves.
Yeah, and that's why I really admire what you're trying to do here with bring to light these different topics. I look forward to hearing the other interviews that you're doing, because I'm sure people, everyone probably comes at this from a different perspective as well. But I'm really happy to share my perspective and how it's impacted me throughout my career with you.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to you for doing that too. And I know you shared a lot about your motivations already, but is there anything else that you're hoping people will take away from this today?
I guess just mainly that, don't feel like that you're alone. You're not going to be the first person who's doubted yourself, doubted your abilities. I think it's a pretty natural thing that we all go through for our own reasons. And just knowing that, other people are going through the same kinds of things. I mean, sometimes we can feel like all people are showing us, if they're on Facebook or LinkedIn, everyone's trying to show all the good things that are happening, but we all have our struggles. We all have these other things that we're fighting back against and trying to improve on. And yeah, it's just you're not alone.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect place for us to wrap up today. And thank you so much again, Lori. I really appreciate your taking the time to share your story with us today.
Thank you, Kim. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this.
Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share it with other women who can benefit from this conversation. Before we go, I want to share some additional resources with you. If you struggle with imposter syndrome and you want to manage it more effectively, I invite you to join my free Impostor Syndrome online challenge. Every day for 7 days, you'll get an email with self-reflection questions and exercises to help you better understand your own experience with imposter syndrome and how to navigate it more effectively. To join the free challenge, visit executive-career-success.com/imposter-syndrome-challenge. When you sign up, you'll immediately receive your first message. Also, if you're interested in joining a community of women who engage in candid conversations that generally aren't happening elsewhere, I invite you to join my Leading Women discussion group. On the first and third Thursday of every month at 12 p.m. Eastern, we meet virtually over Zoom to talk about questions or challenges related to career management, leadership development, and any other relevant topics such as imposter syndrome and confidence. It's always a great discussion with a great group of women. If you want to check it out, you're welcome to be my guest on a future call. Just reach out to me at kim@executivecareersuccess.com and I will share the call details with you. And if you want to join my newsletter to receive tips, insights, and updates, text Leading Women, all one word, to 66866. Finally, consider telling us your story. Contact me to learn more about how you can be a guest on the Impostor Syndrome Files. Thanks again and have a wonderful day.